Shalom. Thank you for visiting us here at the West African Jews of the Diaspora channel here on YouTube. And we have an interesting topic to cover, very short video. It is basically answering a question that was posed to me, and I thought the question was very interesting. And the question is, do we say a blessing before the washing of hands or afterwards? Do we say a bracha before the washing of hands or after the washing of hands? That was the exact question. Now, before I answer that question, I want you to all hit the subscribe button and then the notification button below and hit the like button so we can change the, as they call it, what did they call it? Well, anyway, to change the system of YouTube where people can be aware of our presence. I forget what they call it, right? Anyway, you can see how much of a tech I am when it comes to these things. But let's get to the question. Do we say a bracha before we wash our hands? And the answer is yes. The rule of thumb is whenever we perform a mitzvah, we say a bracha before we perform that mitzvah. And we do this because we want the heavens or Hashem to know our intentions. And therefore, we also want to keep in mind why we are performing that mitzvah. If we're distracted doing the mitzvah and our intentions are wrong, our hearts or our minds aren't sincere in performing that mitzvah or that commandment that was given in Torah, then we might as well do nothing. So everything we do, we always do it for the sake of heaven. We don't do it for ourselves. We don't do it for our egos. With that being said, all mitzvot that we perform have to have a bracha before it. Now, some of you are asking, well, I've seen communities when they begin to wash their hands and then they say the bracha. Well, let's explore that. According to our community and according to the teachings of Rabbi Zachariah, blessed memory, Rabbi Brooks, blessed memory, and Rabbi Gershon Katan, my rabbis, a blessed memory, taught us that we say a bracha before we begin to wash our hands. And so, with that being said, we will lift our hands up and will not let the water touch our hands until we say the bracha. Be as it may, there are other communities that will do it differently. They will lift their hands up, they will let the water pour on their hands, and then they will say a bracha. Now, this sounds like a contradiction, right? It does. When you perceive it in that way, you were assuming that the people began washing when the water touches their hands. For our community, that's how we perceive it. We perceive washing is when the water actually begins to make contact. So therefore, we say the bracha before we pour the water onto our hands. But according to the Shulchan Aruch, written by Rabbi Yosef Carroll, he explains that the custom of their communities, first, before explaining the customs of the community, he reiterates the halacha, which is one should say the bracha before washing of hands. But then he goes on explaining the custom of his community by saying that they perceive the water as only one part of the process. In other words, the water is not the actual washing of hands. What completes this process of washing of hands is the rubbing off of the hands. Perchance there might be some type of debris or some residue on the hands. So therefore, being a makmarim or being strict, they decided to use towels to wipe off the hands. So thereby, in doing that, is the washing of the hands. So they will pour water on their hands and they will say the bracha before the rubbing of the hands. So many of you out there thought they were drying their hands, right? I mean, it's a two-for-oneer. Yes, they will eventually dry their hands if they keep rubbing their hands with a towel. But the rubbing of hands initially while the hands are wet is to them the washing of hands. So they are saying the bracha before the actual washing of hands. Now, if you don't believe me, the Ben Ish Chai, right, known as Rabbi or Chacham Yosef Chaim, writes in his halacha, right, stating that one must say the blessing before the wiping of hands. He's only recertifying that the halakha is correct, that you must say the bracha before the washing of hands. So with that being said, what you are witnessing is maybe two methods. The method of one community of washing your hands, actually saying the bracha before the water touches it, and another method where the community allows the water to touch their hands and they say the bracha before the wiping off of the hands. If you like this video, hit the subscribe button below, the notification button if you haven't already, and make sure you hit the like. We want to make sure you hit the like. I'm Rabbi Yehudah. Thank you very much for visiting us here again. And if you love what we just discussed, share it with many other people. Thank you out there for those questions. Keep them coming, and we will do our best to answer them. Shalom uvaracha.